The human body consists of around 1 trillion cells. That's trillion with a T. And they all work together to make you, you. Your heart beats around 100,000 times per day. Information travels from cell to cell in your brain at the speed of 268 miles per hour. Our bones, they have like the ability to heal themselves. It takes 43 different muscles working together simultaneously just for you to smile. On average, each human produces enough saliva in their lifetime to fill 2 pools. Seriously? All right, let's get started. If you were to measure the length of all the blood vessels in the average person's body and add them all together, they would be around 60,000 miles long. That's long enough to wrap around the world twice. Our bodies are incredible. But the craziness doesn't stop with our bodies. We live in a universe that has more stars than we have grains of sand on all of the world's beaches combined. There are over 350,000 different species of beetles in the world, and those are the only ones that we know about. There's a species of frog known as the wood frog that can hold its pee for up to 8 months. 8 months. When was the last time you stopped and thought about how crazy it is that we get to experience this thing called life? We are constantly surrounded by miraculous things like babies being born and food growing out of the ground or beautiful sunsets, and yet many of us walk through life without noticing the beauty that we are surrounded by. We don't notice how crazy it is that someone invented cheeseburgers and now we can just eat cheeseburgers. And we have this habit of taking things for granted. The surest way to miss the beauty that God has infused into the world is, of course, to take it all for granted. And by the way, doesn't that sort of explain why we find it so hard to connect with God in our everyday lives? I mean, how do you feel when the people in your life take your work, your accomplishments, your beautiful creations for granted? When your mom barely notices that you finally cleaned your room spotless without even being asked to, how does that affect the connection that you two share? When you try to show your friend a new song or a video you've made and they brush it off like it doesn't matter, how does that affect the connection that you share? When you make the honor roll, make the team, get the part, do the thing, and nobody that should notice or should care seems to notice or care, how does that affect the connection that you share? The correct answer is negatively. It affects your connection negatively. So what would it be like if we stopped taking things for granted, if we were able to just notice the beautiful things around us? It might help. Let's talk about it. When you think of people who seem to connect with God well over the course of their lives, Moses, Paul, and David might be a few guys that come to mind. That's probably because they were intentional about a little word called wonder. They allowed wonder to play a significant role in the way they viewed God, life, and themselves. These people's lives show us where the invitation of wonder is hiding. They show us the experiences that we take for granted that are, they're meant to be invitations for us to wonder at the beauty of God and the life that God has given each of us. And so as we look at when they used wonder to connect with God, hopefully we can learn to do it in our own lives. Let's start with Moses. So Moses teaches us to wonder at the extraordinary moments in our lives. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we talked about a story from the book of Exodus. Remember that, right? And in that story, God sent Moses to set a group of slaves free, and then God does all these extraordinary things to make it happen. And after they're freed, they begin to sing. And in their song, Moses says this: "Who is like you, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glorious deeds, doing wonders?" Exodus 15:11. The first thing that Moses does after seeing God do something extraordinary is intentionally wonder. Moses made sure that he appreciated the beauty of what just happened by pausing to reflect on what had just happened. As we go through life, we're often surprised by extraordinary moments. Maybe there's a stunning sunset on the drive home from school, or maybe you have an experience of God while at summer camp. Whatever it may be, we all have these moments, right? They seem extraordinary. They seem heavier, weightier than other moments. And what we learn from Moses is that when we experience an extraordinary moment like that, God is inviting us to pause and wonder at its beauty and remember that it's a gift from God. But invitations to connect with God are not just hiding in the extraordinary moments, but also in the normal everyday moments as well, which brings us to Paul. See, Paul teaches us to wonder at the normal moments in our lives. Paul was one of the first missionaries of the Christian church. He had this extraordinary encounter with Jesus while on the way to persecute Jesus' followers, and his life was radically changed. And he spent the rest of his life traveling around the world preaching the gospel. And on one of his journeys, Paul stopped in a place called Lystra. And while he was there, he tells the people how they've experienced God in their normal lives, even before hearing the good news of Jesus. He says this: God did not leave himself without witness, for he did good by giving you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons, satisfying your hearts with food and gladness. That's Acts 14:17. Rain? Crops? Seems kind of basic, and yet Paul's encouragement is that Christians find wonder in these normal, basic, but super necessary gifts from God. This is pretty incredible when you think about it. This means that even the mundane moments, like eating a delicious burrito or watching a good movie or performing an amazing act with your body, these are all gifts from God, and they're invitations to wonder at God's goodness to us. Wow, God, this is incredible. We don't have to wait for extraordinary moments to wonder at the goodness of God. We can do it when we're eating lunch or when we're laughing with our friends or when we're spitting into a bowl. But the thing is, we don't even have to tie our wonder to specific moments. And that brings us to David. See, David teaches us to wonder at life itself. Now, David was a king of Israel in the Old Testament. And though he wasn't perfect, he was a man after God's own heart. He spent his life growing in his relationship with God, and he wrote loads of songs about it. Many of these songs are in the book of Psalms. And in one of those songs, David says this: "When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the son of man that you care for him?" Psalm 8, 3-4. Here David is thinking about all the mighty things that God has done, how God has crafted the stars, the sun, the moon. And yet, it's not those mighty things that are causing David to wonder. David's wondering at how, despite all of those mighty things, God cares for us normal, everyday people. Have you ever stopped to wonder at how incredible it is that we're loved by the creator of the universe? How incredible it is that the one who invented mountains sees our lives as incredibly valuable. The love of God for us is enough to fuel our muscle for wonder for the rest of our lives, and that's what David's doing here, and that's what we're invited to do all of the time. Wonder opens your eyes to God's presence all around us. It connects us with God, and it helps us feel the gravity of God's love for us. And the best part about the invitation for wonder is that it is always available to us. It just takes a little bit of practice. So here are some ways to grow your muscle of wonder. Look up. We typically walk through our lives with our heads down, right? We're so used to our surroundings that we don't even notice them anymore. So try looking up. Try paying attention to things that you normally glance over. Number 2, slow down. Wonder doesn't rush. Like Moses, we have to pause and reflect on the gifts that God has given us to appreciate them. 3, breathe. When you experience something that causes you to wonder, focus on it and take 3 deep breaths. This gives us time to just appreciate the gift that God has given us and to help us enjoy it. Like any skill, the more you practice, the better you're gonna get. Wonder is simply noticing the miraculous nature of the life that we live. And if you practice doing this, you're gonna begin noticing the presence of God in places that you never have before. So here's the point. Let wonder draw you closer to the one. The beauty of the story of God is that God didn't wait for humanity to come to him. Instead, God first came to us. Jesus showed us the lengths that God is willing to go to show the world that we are loved and that we have a place to belong. God has infused the world with reminders of this reality. All around us are invitations to remember the goodness of God, to remember the love of God, to remember what a gift it is that we get to experience life. Wonder is an invitation to see what has been there the whole time. The presence of God in your very life, reminding you that you are loved, reminding you that you belong. So look up, slow down, and breathe, because wonder is an invitation to connect with God.